Welcome to Smulcast, where we help you live a healthier and fuller life. My name is Meg Lagerwey, and today we are joined by Stephanie, who is a registered dietitian, and she is also interested in hormone health, wellness, holistic health, gut health, all of it. Steph, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What interested you in this topic? Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, Meg. I'm so excited to chat about a topic that we're both so passionate about. I'm a registered dietitian, but I went on to study and to look into the more integrative holistic space. And when we're looking at nutrition and having looked at the way in which it interacts with the gut, there's no possible way of separating the two. And so today I see clients one-on-one, consult in Cape Town, in various areas, and obviously gut health plays a real central role in optimizing people's health and wellness and promoting optimal well-being. So it's exciting space to be in, and it's amazing. It's growing, and there's so much science and information coming out day by day.
Every day. There's so much to learn and consume. And you work with clients worldwide as well, hey?
Yeah, I see a lot of patients remotely, which is awesome. I think COVID really changed the game there. And it's a space that's just increasing.
Yeah, it's something I could talk about for hours, so they're going to have to rein us in. But let's start with the basics. Tell us, what is gut health? What is the gut microbiome? Just explain it in like layman's terms.
Okay, awesome. I think when people think about gut health, they just think about the physical structure of the gut. But what's really important is realizing that your gut is not just made up of a physical structure. It's actually got a whole community of gut bugs, which we call the microbiome. It's the microbiome which has really brought gut health into the limelight, because it's the live bugs that are living in your gut that release certain messages. I always think about them as being the most chatty of all living things possible, because they release messages that speak to every single organ in the body and control so many systems.
Yeah.
So it's actually pivotal to
overall health.
So we're looking at gut health. We're looking at, well, what is that gut microbiome made up of? Is it made up of good gut bugs that promote and send messages for health, or is it made up of bad gut bugs that put the body at dis-ease and cause disease? So that's what we're looking at when we're referring to gut health.
And in your large intestine or your colon, there's bacteria, but there's also other things also living in harmony in the colon. Am I right?
Yeah.
So you've got your viruses and all of that.
Fungi, bacteria, exactly. So the microbiome is made up of a whole host of different types of organisms.
Okay. And they all function together like this happy family kind of. And then if there's an imbalance, that's when we start to see the issues coming up.
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell me, Steph, when it comes to immunity and nutrient absorption, how do your gut bacteria specifically, how are they making sure that that's working in the body? What are your gut bugs doing in that case to strengthen immunity or to assist in nutrient absorption?
I think the best way to think about the gut and its role it plays in immunity and overall health is to almost think about your gut being as like your own personal security system.
Okay.
So your gut is made up of a single layer of cells. So think about the skin being made up of 7 layers thick. So if you look at how important it is to ensure that those gut cells almost stick together and that they're well intact, so that we can prevent bad things from being absorbed into the body while ensuring that nutrients that actually feed every cell are absorbed. The gut bugs act as almost the little soldiers that assess whether, or determine whether something should be absorbed or not in the body. And if they come into contact with certain infectious agents or environmental toxins that shouldn't be entering the body, they send signals to your immune system to tell your immune system to fight, to prevent the bad possible health triggers from affecting your overall health.
Okay, sure. So your gut bugs essentially are like a boot camp for your immunity. They train your immune system and are regulating what's happening.
Yeah.
And when in terms, you mentioned, things entering your bloodstream that shouldn't be, when there's an imbalance or dysbiosis in the gut, what sort of issues is that leading to? What do you see in your practice where someone's maybe got a severe case of dysbiosis? How are you seeing that in the rest of their body? Is it?
So what's really important is to realize that obviously a case of dysbiosis, where we're looking at an imbalance of bad to good gut bugs in your colon, is we see gut related symptoms. So we see bloating, pain, discomfort, change in stool patterns. But what we also see is what we call extraintestinal symptoms, where we start to see fatigue, we start to see signs of nutrient malabsorption. So we see changes in skin, hair, nails, inability to sleep well, inability to be productive. We start to see changes in the immune system to the point where we may see autoimmune type conditions.
Sure.
And so, or hormone imbalances. So we can see that in assessing gut health, we can't only look at just your gut related symptoms. We've got to look at what other extraintestinal symptoms are showing up. And then look at the gut as almost the starting point to bring overall balance to your body and well-being to your body.
It's fascinating. I mean, this is what actually started my journey to gut health and why I was so interested in it, because for years and years I struggled with, gut symptoms were some of it, like bloating and, those general ones. But actually my main symptoms were brain fog, anxiety, acne. And then I was like, what is going on? There's something wrong here. And that's when I started my journey to discovering it and kind of trying to heal my gut over many years, which, back then it was like trial and error. But what are some dietary and lifestyle changes that you would recommend to someone, say in my case, who came to you and just said, okay, I'm bloated all the time, I'm in severe pain, it's not maybe IBS, but it's something's wrong with the gut. What would you suggest?
Yeah, so I think, obviously every patient is different when we're looking at someone in practice. I kind of like to summarize the journey towards gut healing or optimal gut health with like a simple 5R, what do you call it?
Analogy.
Yeah, exactly. Analogy. So we're looking at your lifestyle. We're wanting to look at, well, firstly, what do we want to remove from your diet or from your lifestyle that may be inhibiting your journey to attaining optimal gut health? So it could be certain stresses, it could be lack of sleep, it could be a sedentary lifestyle. And then there are obviously certain foods that we're looking at that are more inflammatory to the body. So I always say to a patient, like if we're looking at foods, we want to look at what are the red light foods that are really going to stop your journey towards attaining a healthier gut? What are like the possible yellow foods that may cause it, and what are the green foods that are going to promote optimal gut health? So inflammatory foods, I don't think you'll be able to come in here, but we're looking at all your refined sugars, we're looking at artificial sweeteners, which I know you've come up with incredible recipes that use natural natural foods to actually create beautiful treats and foods for people. I love your recipes. Alcohol, trans fats. But what's important is that we can attain a healthy gut while still maintaining a balanced intake. So I always say that classic 80-20 principle. Like let's go for whole foods 80% of the time, 20% of the time. So a few inflammatory foods come and find in between. It's not going to
derail you.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the amazing thing is that we know that gut health is not just about what we remove, it's what we put in. And that's where we move on to the repair phase. So what can we possibly remove or keep in the 20%, but then what can we do to actually repair that gut lining? Because often if someone's got a case of dysbiosis and, an imbalance between gut and gut bugs, their gut almost becomes leaky and almost those gut cells move apart, and you then get a triggering of the immune system or the immune cells that lie beneath the gut lining, which then sends, the signals for disease or disease to the rest of the body. And the repair phase is where we bring in good foods. So we know that a good protein source is a very important fuel source to nourish those cells, to allow those cells to recover and to regenerate. We look at a lot of your fat soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D. We're looking at certain foods, which is where your recipes are so incredible. We're wanting to actually bring in certain soluble and insoluble fibers or gut food to feed the gut bugs, the good gut bugs.
Okay. I mean, yeah, for me, the whole fiber element is amazing. That your gut bacteria actually will then eat that fiber and produce short chain fatty acids, which then repair the gut lining as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like diet plays such a huge role in the fundamental healing of your gut. Do you see any like crazy misconceptions in your practice where people are, there's a lot of talk about these gut myths, like drink this one shake and you can heal your gut in 3 days or anything like that. Do you come across that sort of thing?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I see is people coming in having been on elimination diets. So where they've eliminated every possible food trigger. Remember, when your gut, should your gut be in a poor state, the likelihood of you having food reactions, whether it be not feeling so great in your tummy to rashes showing up on your skin, you name it, is expected if your gut's in a poor space. So people start to eliminate foods to the point where they're actually not getting in the nourishment to be able to heal the gut lining and to feed the microbiome, in terms of what we're saying here. Misconceptions would be around taking the latest in supplement that's on Instagram, or following a dietary regime for a short time period. I think it's really important to start to see gut health as a lifestyle, because we know that food is one of the most important modifiable factors that will influence that gut microbiome and begin to heal that gut or to optimize that gut health. But we know, as we've said, stress, sleep, sedentary lifestyle, not taking care of yourself and getting sick to the point where you need to be on multiple medications.
Yeah.
Play
So
a
it's
role.
really it's like a full circle. Everything impacts your gut and your gut impacts everything. I feel like it's like this whole system that works together. I mean, so when I mentioned my anxiety and brain fog, which is an area that I'm very fascinated by, is the gut-brain axis and how the gut and the brain communicate via the vagus nerve. So can you just explain how that system works? How are the brain and the gut communicating? I know people refer to the gut as a second brain. I mean, that's how impactful it is in determining our mood. And I can tell, when I've got small kids at home, when I don't sleep, which is most nights, but I can see it affects my mood almost instantly. And I can feel this biodirectional communication happening between the gut and the brain. So if you can expand on how that actually works, that would be awesome.
It's almost a little bit like how we felt when we began this podcast. There's butterflies in our tummies.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like when you get nervous, or if you're anticipating something, you actually feel it in your gut, which is phenomenal, which is a crazy thing. So we know that certain neurotransmitters or brain chemicals that control our mood are actually produced in our gut.
Okay.
So we know that up to 70% of your serotonin, or your happy hormone, can be produced in your gut. So depending on what is being produced in your gut, how you're taking care of your gut or feeding your gut microbiome is going to dictate which kinds of neurotransmitters are being produced. And those leave the gut and they then start to talk to the brain, and they start to impact your mood, your energy levels.
Sure.
And then we see that via the vagus nerve, we see the brain starting having an impact on how your gut functions day to day, and how the gut microbiome is established and developed.
Sure.
So there's this bi-directional link that we see day in and day out.
Sure. So are you saying that certain types of bacteria, when they're fed the right type of food, fiber, they produce certain types of neurotransmitters? So if we're not eating those fibers, we're not going to be producing, or our gut bacteria is not going to be producing those neurotransmitters.
Yeah. Yeah, so if we're not feeding our gut the right foods to be able to allow those good gut bugs to thrive, the neurotransmitter production won't be favorable for good mood. And that's what I see often in practice is you see that someone comes in with poor gut health and they're struggling with mood. Makes sense considering that so many of your happy hormones, your relaxation hormones are produced in the gut.
Yeah.
So it's not an unusual link to see at all.
Yeah, no, diet has such a huge impact. And Steph, how do you go about testing someone's gut? Do you do stool samples? What is your first protocol if someone came to you and said, these are my symptoms? Where would you start?
Yeah, so what we generally do is stool testing and blood testing hand in hand. We often what we look at the clinical picture, what the person comes in with, because certain gut symptoms can sort of indicate different kinds of infections, whether it's parasitic, whether it's more of a fungal infection, whether it's bacterial imbalance where you've got too much of the wrong bacteria, not enough of the good bacteria, or low levels or low diversity of good gut bugs. Generally, there's signs and symptoms that we can correlate with blood results. So if you see very low nutritional markers, or we see inflammatory markers raised in the blood, indicating that the immune system is switched on, we can then treat the patient accordingly. However, there are cases where someone needs to see a gastroenterologist and have imaging done to see what's actually going on in the gut, or we do stool testing. Stool testing is not readily available in South Africa at a very accessible cost. So we use that when we really feel like we need more of a guideline or direction as to how to address a patient's issues, and then we take it from there.
Okay.
So what's quite interesting is that a lot of people may be listening to this podcast and they're hearing, well, yeah, I've removed a lot of the potential inflammatory foods. I live a good lifestyle. And now Meg and Steph are telling me to eat tons of fiber, but when I eat fiber, I feel incredibly bloated, uncomfortable, and you feel worse. And that we often see when we see a case of dysbiosis, where we've got an overgrowth of the wrong type of bacteria, where we're actually seeing a fermentation process going on in the gut that's aggravating, the production of gas in the gut. And in those cases, we need to treat carefully and individually. Remember, your gut microbiome is dynamic and ever-changing. If you've got dysbiosis and we bring a lot of fibers in as promoted, and you haven't addressed the imbalance with a professional, you won't necessarily feel good initially, and it may not be the right approach for you. But for someone who doesn't have a severe case of dysbiosis, the evidence is, having a fiber-rich diet is imperative.
Yeah.
And so we do move someone towards a balanced approach where we are feeding the right gut bugs, but sometimes it requires some sort of adjustment in a dietary wise to help to manage those symptoms while we get the gut right.
Okay. I once heard an analogy that said that the gut is like a muscle. And if you are so used to eating, your 5 veg and fruit per week, and that's all you're getting, and then you start suddenly adding in all this fiber, of course you're going to flare because your gut is not fit enough to digest and deal with it all. It's like, training for a CrossFit competition and then you want to run a marathon. It's just not going to work.
That's a very cool analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I suppose you got to give your gut time to, when it's not a case where there's a serious imbalance, you got to actually train your gut and give it more and more fiber as you go.
And we also got to just improve that digestive process. Like I always see it time and time again when we see a flare up in symptoms when people are stressed. Remember, when you're stressed, you literally shunt the production of all those little Pac-Man or those enzymes that break down your food and allow for absorption, and you shunt the release of all those digestive juices that assist with the digestive process. So it's really important that we look at those external factors when we're making changes to your diet to best assist you to getting the most optimal diet, foods in for your gut.
Okay. Yeah, I also, another analogy was the whole idea of, moving from your sympathetic into your parasympathetic state, and when you're stressed, your digestion is literally the last thing on your body's list. So
Exactly.
you know, we need to, like you said, the external factors really like hone in and make sure that you are relaxed when you're eating, especially, and like chewing your food properly. It's those simple things that often are crucial, and we just think we just can fix it with, you know, a plaster or whatever. And also probiotics, maybe that should be the next point of discussion. I know probiotics is something that everybody, I feel, knows about, and it kind of goes hand in hand with gut health, but it can be a super controversial point. So what is your take on probiotics? What is your, how would you, does your everyday healthy person have to take a probiotic, or should they take a probiotic, or do you prefer to recommend fermented foods or probiotic foods?
Yeah. Before I touch on probiotics, I just want to touch on what we spoke about previously, about the way you eat is as important as what's on your plate. And some of the most practical tips that I give individuals is chew your food. Like, bottom line. Like, if you're not chewing 30 times per bite, remember, your digestive process starts in your mouth. It's then going to be hard work for your gut bugs to start to continue to assist breaking down that food in order for it to be absorbed. So the way someone eats is so important. And
so many people just chew 5 times and swallow.
Yeah.
And they wonder why they're in so much discomfort after a meal.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I know not everyone has time to cook, but actually taking time to prep food, like sit with the family, eat. You know, when you start to ready your body to eat, you start to release that saliva that contains all those little Pac-Man or digestive enzymes. So gut health actually starts with the way you eat and how you're putting food into your mouth, which is such a practical thing. I think with our busy lives, we just rush over.
That everyone can do. Everyone can start by chewing their food 30 bites per mouthful.
Literally.
Like, make it soupy in your mouth before you swallow, basically.
Exactly. I always tell people you should even be chewing your smoothies. That's how.
Oh my gosh.
That's how good you should be at thinking about the way you eat. Moving on to probiotics. So I think what's really important is to realize that where the science is around probiotics is still developing. There are certain probiotic strains that we use or are indicated for certain conditions, but we can't prescribe a probiotic the way we prescribe a medication for a condition. There are, like, the studies around probiotics make it difficult to almost create a prescription list, because we've got certain types of different bugs, we've got a different number of probiotics, we've got different ways in which, you know, they're taken or administered, which make the studies quite confusing. But what we do know is that getting in certain fermented foods, which we'll touch on now, are most important. It's very important that if you're looking at a supplement for a probiotic, that you're actually looking at the label correctly, okay? Because a probiotic should always be identified to strain level. It should be in the amount that studies have shown it to exert a beneficial effect in humans. And a lot of the products on the market are not identified to strain level. You can't track their quality to ensure that the products are actually live upon consumption once the time you've taken it. So the amount of probiotic in that supplement may have dropped.
So just so that you must look for something that's listing the strains. Is that
right down to strain levels, the way that they classify.
So it's going to say whatever, lactobacillus,
and then they're going to have the specific strain identification. And I think we could have a whole podcast on how to actually identify the correct probiotic. And then your health professional will help you to actually identify what, like, if you're looking at that strain, like how much that probiotic has been exerted to have beneficial effects in the human body based on science and studies. And can we actually track the brand quality to know that by the time you've taken in the probiotic, it's live.
It's getting where it's going to, needs to go to. Because that stomach acid is will likely kill a lot of what you're taking anyway.
And obviously shelf life and how it's stored is really important. So I think like that we could talk about for hours. And as you said, we do use strain specific probiotics in certain conditions, but not every healthy individual needs to be taking a probiotic. That's getting back to your answer. If you are eating well. That's where it starts.
Starts
And you
on
can
the
take a
plate.
probiotic. The probiotic will work for the time period you're taking it. But if you stop and your foundation is not set from a dietary and lifestyle point of view, you will not be able to maintain appropriate gut health and overall health.
And long-term health.
Yeah.
So speaking of
Mental.
diet, what does your typical plate look like? Let's do something practical. What does your ideal gut-loving meal look like on a plate?
Okay. So this is where we advocate plant-based eating. That doesn't mean it has to be exclusively plants or vegetarian or vegan, you name it. But the majority of that plate needs to be plant foods.
Okay.
So we're thinking plant foods, we're thinking firstly, eat your veggies. Every single different colored pigment in a vegetable contains a different nutrient that is important, which you call polyphenols or phytonutrients, which are important for your gut health and your gut strength. So I say to someone, at least the classic 50% of your plate needs to be vegetables.
Okay, so broccoli, beetroot, lentils,
green leaves.
Green leaves.
Green leaves are my ultimate, my favorite.
Okay.
I always say that like that green color actually contains the color of the rainbow when it comes to phytonutrients. It contains multiple various compounds which are important for gut health.
Okay.
And then we're looking for a fiber-rich source. So that's where we're looking at legumes or grains. So I know you also cook a lot with the various legumes or grains. Some individuals don't tolerate legumes or grains very well because of a degree of dysbiosis. Then we can look at other fiber sources that are more rich in your plant-based fats. So various nuts and seeds are an excellent source of fiber. Avo is, out of interest, that's an easy way to top up your nutrients. When it comes to fermented foods and adding fermented foods to that plate, we know that it can be a little bit of a touch and go approach when we're looking at things like kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, because the way that those foods are fermented and what's been used, their starter cultures, etc., will impact what the end product is. I always say to someone, if you can tolerate fermented dairy,
so yogurts and kefir,
that's scientifically has been shown to have the right kinds of bacteria at the right amount to exert beneficial effects in the body. Okay, so I mean, fermented food's great, but it is a touch and a go approach because there's less of a standardization as opposed to dairy products.
Okay.
Getting in adequate protein is really important. Okay, remember those gut cells require those building blocks to replenish themselves. So a clean protein, if you do have animal protein, obviously looking at your omega-3 rich food sources are really important because that gives your body the correct ratio of fats to bring that inflammation down to allow that gut to heal. But Meg, what would you say is one of your like ultimate gut healing foods that people have taken to that you've
one particular or a plate?
A plate.
Plate. Oh, Steph, I love some quinoa. That's pretty much always on my plate. Quinoa, broccoli, beetroot. I like you say, the colors. Eat the rainbow. And just I like to always then pair a vitamin C sauce in there. So like tomatoes or even just lemon squeezed over the top. And then I don't eat too much animal products, but if we do, it's usually a fish of sorts or chicken. But I mean, I've got kids, so I always try and hide. It sounds so bad to say that. To hide veg for them to eat because I know how important it is for their little bodies also to be getting enough veg in. So I always sprinkle like seeds, mixed seeds, because that's really, I mean, you get your pumpkin, sesame, flax seeds, and whatever else in your meal. And that's also a really nice source of omegas. So that, and then my standard go-to breakfast is chia seeds.
I was about to say chia seeds. Like if you want to get your gut right, chia seeds are one of my ultimate because they've got so much fiber per tablespoon. They've got about, if you get 2 tablespoons of chia seed, it meets about 30%.
Sure. That
of
is,
your fiber needs for the day,
that's
which is
amazing.
amazing.
And
So
that's
like, when you
very
start your
easy
day
to
like that.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what you're talking about, Meg, is that they've got the kinds of fiber that feed the gut to produce those short chain fatty acids as little beneficial, healing, anti-inflammatory messages for the body. So those chia pots of yours are an ultimate go-to for anyone who's wanting
Yeah.
to start taking care of their
That's
gut.
awesome. And some people actually struggle with chia seeds. So
I
what?
mean, the consistency of the taste.
No, they actually, I often have people messaging me, I can't, they just make me bloat. You know, so I suppose it's very individual, like you say. You just got to try and see how you do. And then if there's an actual problem, come to someone like you and sort it out, because you can't go on living restricting your diet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But speaking about vegetables, I know no one wants to listen to this podcast and hear eat your veggies like the whole time. But genuinely,
Yeah.
like, people need to, well, we all need to evaluate what we have in the fridge, because I'm telling you now, every single individual that comes to me doesn't get enough vegetables in.
No ways.
Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
at least 6 cups, like, a day, at least.
At least.
And the easiest way to say someone, like, they don't want to add vegetables to every plate. So I'm like, okay, let's up a smoothie, because that's such a
100%.
practical way to be able to put all your greens in there.
Yeah.
That NutriBullet cup should be half spinach,
Really?
baby spinach.
You love your spinach. Okay. I'm going to be putting spinach into my kids' smoothies.
Yeah.
So an interesting, just on the veggie thing, an interesting study which you'll know about is that the American Gut Project, where they looked at thousands of samples, and they found that people who had the healthiest and most diverse gut bacteria were eating 30 different types of plants per week.
Yeah.
So that's a nice goal to have. It can be quite scary when you start, what am I doing right or what am I doing wrong? And I actually, because I coach clients, I don't work specifically, healing the gut in your case, but we can work towards healthier habits together. And it's nice to be able to track. So like, have a notepad out and write, what did we have today? Did you get 7? And then, try and get to that 30 variety if you can. If your gut's happy and you're thriving on the diversity and the variety, get to 30 different types of plants per week. And whenever I tell that to someone, everyone falls off their chair, but it's actually not that hard to do, especially when you're doing something like a smoothie or a poke bowl, because then you can just add all sorts of delicious
if you have
things in there.
go-tos like that, where it allows you to, chop and change the kind of veg that you're using, then it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I think it's, if it is accessible to someone to be able to shop seasonally or to get like those seasonal boxes, you're getting a variety of things coming in all the time. You don't go through to your go-tos.
Yeah, because we stick to our standards, but actually we need to be trying different types of veg and fruit. Yeah. Steve, so yeah, what are your tips for someone who wants to start today? They've listened to this podcast, they are as fascinated as we are, and they want to just take the next steps. What would you recommend? Step 1 to 5, or how do I start?
Yeah, let's just give some basic things, and maybe we can also summarize what we've sort of discussed as like take homes. First and foremost, perhaps encouraging people to go and look what's in their cupboard.
Yeah.
And what's in the fridge, and like to look at like a couple of basics. So what could we take out of that cupboard that's now become your go-to, that's not necessarily feeding your your gut the right food, and what can we bring in on a shopping list front? So if you are going for tons of rusks and biscuits and sweets in amidst meals, like, go look at Meg's page and make some of the delicious treats. But really stocking up on some of the foods that we've spoken about, if you can handle this. Someone who doesn't have severe dysbiosis, but flaxseed, chia seed, nut butters, rolled oats, if that's your thing. Thinking what's in my pantry at the moment.
Chickpeas.
Quinoa, chickpeas, legumes.
The dried stuff is great to have in your cupboard, because it keeps for long.
It keeps for long. You can do the tin stuff too, and you just rinse it. If you've got a pressure cooking or instant pot, that's the easiest way to prepare that the legumes which also assists with reducing those bloating type compounds.
Okay.
Looking at your fridge, looking at whether if you can tolerate dairy, most people can tolerate fermented dairy by the time their guts are in a good space, but not, there are exceptions. Have you got good quality yogurt or kefir? Have you got some fermented veg if that's your thing? Otherwise, is the majority of your veg cupboard full?
Okay. So start on the plate or the fridge.
Start
It's
on
a
the
good
plate.
start.
Yeah, start on the plate or the fridge. Looking at the way one eats.
Okay.
So again, being super intentional and mindful about, like, what I do. Sometimes I have lunch alone. I literally put on a playlist and listen to a song, like a playlist for 15 minutes. And if I have finished eating before 15 minutes, then I know that I haven't actually eaten the way that my body needs to be able to.
That's very clever. I like
Yeah.
that idea.
Yeah. Everyone should be looking at basic nutritional screening,
Okay.
because that gives you an indication as to whether there is definitely malabsorption or maldigestion maldigestion and malabsorption going on in the background.
Okay.
So some people, sometimes it's obvious where you're feeling extremely fatigued, or you're getting breaking hair, brittle nails, dry skin, and we know that there may be a potential nutrient deficiency, but sometimes you don't know. It can take days, months for nutritional deficiency to present. So we can do some blood tests to actually screen where you're sitting at. I'm telling you that right now, most people don't get in some of the most important nutrients for actually keeping that gut lining intact, one of them being omega-3. So yeah, we can get from flaxseed, chia seed, but that's not necessarily always converted to the active form for your cells to use, depending on your genetics. That's why we test genetics in practice. Fish, if you can source it sustainably, if you feel comfortable with, with eating fish. Certain other nutrients will definitely be your vitamin D. So vitamin D rich sources, tough to get in from a dietary source, but really important for that immune system and that gut lining integrity. So we can find vitamin D in our egg yolks, our fatty fish, mushrooms, but you've got to tan your mushrooms. Do you know that trick?
Yes, putting them in the sun.
Putting them in the sun to convert that vitamin D from vitamin D2, the inactive form, to vitamin D3.
That's so epic.
The active
How
form.
cool.
We'll be tanning our mushrooms.
And yourself while you're at it for a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Exactly.
Exactly. Your vitamin A, so that's where that dark pigmented kind of veg comes in. So your carrots, your
baby spinach.
Yeah, exactly. Your dark greens and your orange pigmented veg. Ensuring you're getting an adequate protein. And you can get adequate protein on a plant-based diet. That's an absolute. If you do eat eggs, that's a great way to get in something called choline, which is important for cell regeneration in that gut. Your B12, your protein, and your vitamin D, which is brilliant. Okay, so where are we?
You mentioned the screening as the third
the nutritional
point.
screening. Yeah, the nutritional screening is important. I think forming community like this to chat about some of the practicals, to listen to the podcast, to find some sort of community where you are gaining science-based information, because it's so easy now on Instagram to scroll over, think about one supplement's going to solve your issues, or you may hear a bit of science here and there, but it may be completely misinterpreted or misunderstood. So actually, forming having some sort of platform to go to actually learn.
Yeah, sure.
Lifestyle factors.
Lower stress.
Oh,
I like
that's
the breathing exercises. That's what I do with my
full breath.
Well, I do like a full body thing where the client will sit there and I literally take them from their toes right up to their shoulders, because we hold so much stress here. And then I also feel better about going into the session, and then just taking them out of that stress, fight or flight, straight into rest and digest. So that's something that I think is super important. And I'm often overstimulated with my girls screaming and they need me all the time. And when I can, I take 5 minutes and just do the deep breathing, just to help my body get back into rest and digest. Otherwise, we live in this chronic
Absolutely.
and it's just wreaking havoc on our gut health. So yeah, the lifestyle factors, I think.
Absolutely.
Exercise, hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
if
Pilates and yoga and those things are also great for your
some of
gut
that
health.
restorative exercise is essential. And like one of the most important things is to develop a way of sustainable eating, because it's easy to say, let's do this 2 weeks, done, but a sustainable, easy way of actually adopting some of these practices is important to establish, and in terms of what works for you and what works for me. Planning is one of the most important things. Unfortunately, like that is the reality, but there are certain quick fixes and quick recipes that we can make that assist with getting in some of these foods, smoothies, overnight soaked chia seeds or oats, whatever it may be, poke bowls, prepping veg in advance that keeps in the fridge for 3 to 4 days. That's what and I think that's what you do as a coach, as someone who walks a journey with someone nutritionally, is you wanting to bring this and make it practical.
Yeah, 100%. People want to know what to do.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, food was created to be enjoyed. We're not just, it's not just medicine.
Yeah.
It's to be enjoyed, which is so important.
Yeah.
And the people who, that's really important. The people who have a happy headspace around eating, who see food as nourishment and not as so many of my patients and clients, have come in seeing food as like harmful to their bodies because they've been on multiple elimination diets, or they've tried every possible fad diet on the planet. Like, to restore that is so important for your gut health, because again, the way you eat and how you see food is as essential as what's on your plate.
Yeah, sure. That connection with food actually is super vital. Sure. Yeah. Steph, is there any key takeaways that you want to mention, something you feel like we didn't get to touch on maybe that you want to mention, or do you feel like I
feel like we might open up another can of worms and then we'd be chatting for
a can of bugs.
A can of bugs. Yeah, a can of gut bugs. Thinking, can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah, for me, this journey, obviously I'm not a dietitian, but for me, I've just seen how fixing my own gut health has transformed my life from being someone who was so restrictive with their diet because everything hurt me. There was a point where I ate like popcorn and apples. That's what I survived on, just because I couldn't eat anything else. And so this passion comes from like actually seeing the effect that healing your gut has on your entire body. Like the way you exercise, it like healing my gut improved my running. It improved how I train, even your strength training. It improved how I sleep. It literally is the powerhouse to your whole body. And I just want people to get that message across. Like, gut health is not just your intestines; it is your entire body's functioning. It impacts everything you do, and I think that's why what you do is so important. And it's just, I'm so glad that I've met you now and been able to chat to you and can refer people to you, because I think so many more people need to actually get to the root cause and find out what's going on. So
it's a beautiful thing to see someone come to that point, because so many people have struggled for so long on their own, and then to see them be able to expand their diet again and to enjoy food and for their lifestyle to shift because of the way that they have changed.
There's so much healing in that space.
There's so much healing, and there's so much hope, and when you've got the right information at your hands and the right
people.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I think that's it. Thanks, Steph. Oh, wait.
Thanks,
where can people find you?
So they can type in my name. They could search me, Stephanie Rouillard. My surname's quite a long one, quite a tough one. Either on Instagram, online, on my website, and then the contact details are there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you. And if you want to find out more about Steph or me or about the podcast and the episodes, go to smul.com.